I'd like to welcome everybody and remind our board that we are being live streamed. This is the July meeting of the Mississippi State Board of Education. I'm Jason Dean, chairman of the board. This meeting is being held today, Thursday, July 16th at 10 a.m. via teleconference and video means pursuant to Mississippi Code annotated section 2541.5. Notice of this meeting was posted in accordance with state law and included the date, time, place, and purpose of the meeting and identified the location of the meeting available to the public. An audio recording is being made of this meeting and minutes of this meeting will be recorded. This meeting is also being live streamed. Dr. Carrie Wright is present in Madison County to participate in this teleconference meeting. Now for the announcement of the quorum. As I call the names of board members, please state the location, just city and state of your presence for this meeting. Mrs. Rosemary Altman.
I'm present in Clinton, Mississippi.
Dr. Karen Elam.
Present in Oxford, Mississippi.
Dr. John Kelly.
I'm present in Gulfport, Mississippi.
Mr. Sean Suggs.
Present in Saltillo, Mississippi.
Mr. Omar Jamil.
Present in Hernando, Mississippi.
A quorum of the board is present at the location stated for the purpose of conducting the meeting through teleconference and video means. The July 16, 2020 board meeting is now called to order at 10:05 a.m. Since this is a teleconference meeting, please identify yourself when asking questions, making comments, or making motions. I will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and I've asked Mrs. Altman to do our invocation. So we've got our handy flag here. Please rise and join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America,
to the republic,
and to the republic for which it stands,
One nation,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Join me in prayer, please. Our Father, we thank you for another day of life. We thank you for the many blessings that you bestow upon us every day, and we pray that we never take those for granted, that we acknowledge each one of them. Lord, we come to you in a difficult time, at a time where things are so uncertain and at times very frightening, and we just pray that you will be with those across our state who are having to make decisions that impact students, that impact families, that impact communities. And we just pray that you'll give them wisdom, that you give them emotional stability, that you give them physical stamina, all those things that are needed to be able to start school in some fashion. We just pray for them and want them to know that we are supportive, and we pray that they feel your presence in the course of making all these decisions. We pray for our country, Lord. We pray for those that are leading us, and we just pray that they too will seek your guidance in these difficult times, that we can get things back on track, that we can realize the so many wonderful things we enjoy as Americans, and we can focus on those and try to make other things better. But we just pray for your guidance in that also. Go with us as we go through this meeting. Guide us as we deliberate these issues. And as always, we'll give you the glory and the praise. In thy name we pray, amen.
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 All right. Thank you for that, Ms. Altman. Okay. You should have in front of you the minutes from the June 11th budget meeting and the minutes of the June 11th, 2020 board meeting. Can I have a motion to approve both of these?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept both sets of minutes.
Great. We have a motion. Is there a second?
second,
A motion.
Karen
Second.
Elam.
Any further discussion? Here none. In favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, we'll move into the approval of the agenda. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? If so, I'll entertain a motion to do so now. All right, hearing none, are there any items on the consent agenda that members would like to pull out for discussion? If so, I'll entertain a motion to do so now. All right, not hearing any, then the agenda as stands requires a motion and a second to be approved. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
This is Sean, so moved.
Okay, there's a motion, and Rosemary, I think, has the second. Any further discussion? Here none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Great. All right, our agenda is set, and I'll turn it over now to our State Superintendent for her report.
All right, good morning and good to see everybody. This has continued to be, as you can well imagine, a very busy time. We've had a busy month, and I'll try and just hit the highlights of everything that has gone on. We continue to really partner with the Alliance for Nonprofits and Philanthropy, particularly around the digital learning plan that we've put together. They've been so supportive and have really helped us in terms of hooking us up with the national consultant that we're working with, and have just been real partners where this is concerned. I've conducted superintendents meetings with the reopening of schools. We held 2 different meetings with them. As you know, we had 9 superintendents that came together to put together that document. And so we've held huge meetings with all superintendents across the state. I also did a presentation to the Tupelo Rotary. They kind of wanted an up-to-date, where's Mississippi as we are right now in terms of our achievements, et cetera. So that I did. Dr. Dobbs also met with the superintendents, so he was able to answer all of their questions around the health-related issues. Excuse me. And he gave them a decision-making matrix on, if you've got a situation, here's the things you need to consider, and here's what you need to consider in terms of mitigation. The SLDS governing board met. Also, I have met with the Mississippi Medical Association and the Mississippi Association of Pediatricians. They are very excited about the whole idea of telehealth and teletherapy that's in our plan. They want to partner with us, and they are willing to do whatever it is that we need to do to ensure that the children of our state get the health care that they need and the therapy that they need. I also, we had a National Association, the National Assessment Governing Board met over a 2-day period of time. And also I was the keynote speaker just Tuesday, actually, for the Campaign for Grade Level Reading. It's their national conference week. And so the governor was kind enough to come on and introduce me. And then I did my presentation. And then there was a panelist that talked about, it's called Maintaining the Momentum in Mississippi was the theme. And it was Senator Tollison, Kelly Butler, and Kimiana Burke were all on the panel to talk from their various and then I was on the Paul Gallo show as well. I've got a couple of updates. I'm going to get Nathan we've got an amazing website that I want you to see that we've updated, and it's called Strong Readers, Strong Leaders. But Nathan is going to bring you up to speed on exactly what's on that website. Nathan?
All right, so let me share my screen. Give me a second.
Okay. And while he's doing that, right after that, Nathan is also going to update you on the new social and emotional learning standards that we have just drafted, and he'll do that right after this. Go ahead, Nathan.
Thank you, Dr. Wright. So we're excited to bring a couple of new resources to you, kind of for information this morning that have been in the works. Both of these have been in the works for some time, but we felt like they're particularly timely given the need for additional support for families across the state. So we have redesigned the Strong Readers MS website, and it is a complete redesign from our Office of Communications as well as from our Office of Elementary Ed and Reading. A cross-agency team worked on this. The landing page, very clear logo. There's a drop down here with different grade levels that you can pull up. And then as you scroll down the page, there are also large icons for each grade level. I would tell you the site is mobile friendly. So if you're using this from an iPad or a phone or a smaller laptop, it is responsive and it does work well in that format. Again, just some real basic information here to tell parents while we're putting this together, because we know that we want our families to be supported as they work with their young learners. We're going to look just this morning at the kindergarten section of this page. Each grade level's got a different color scheme to it, but as you dig in at the top of each page, very clear language here for kindergarten and what they're expected to learn. There are strong reader habits for those students that parents can dig into to help their child succeed, different ways that they can interact with them and ask them questions specifically. There are also questions that parents can ask their child's teacher. Again, in parent-friendly terms, that should help facilitate conversations at each grade level for both parents and teachers related to literacy. And then as we scroll down this kindergarten page, and there's similar content for each of the grade levels, we will be adding upper grades going forward. We've got the K3 in place now and are continuing to add to this site. But there are different aspects of reading that are important at each grade level. And so we're going to dig in specifically just for this morning and look at letter knowledge. And you can see, again, we're in kindergarten, letter knowledge, and then background and why it's important, and then activities for parents to work through with their children at home, very simple activities that they can do. This one requires just a pencil and paper, right? Or even verbal interaction. So there's a number of activities here related to letter recognition that can be completed at home. And then there are also at the bottom of the page, a number of online games and resources that parents may find helpful. In talking with communications, just in the month of June, website use on this page has been absolutely tremendous. To give you a sense of context, in June, we had 30,000 plus hits on the COVID-19 information page. We had over 15,000 hits since this page launched or went live in early June. So it's been well used, well loved, and we're excited to have this up and running. I'll stop there and see if you have any questions before I move into the update on social emotional learning.
Hey, this is Sean. Just a really quick question. This is outstanding, by the way. Looks amazing. Not only can you track, I know you can track the number of hits, but can you also track the areas that they're pinging? Like, are they more first graders, second graders, et cetera? Can you dissect that?
So I don't know that level of detail with the tracking, but I can certainly find that out from our technology office, kind of what the click-throughs look like, and if there are particular pages or links that are getting more activity than others. I'll be glad to click on that.
Yeah, thank you.
Good question. All right. So the next piece that I want to share with you is connected to work that is also, we think, very timely right now for us as a state. As you know, our students across the state are right now in an unusual situation where they have been out of school for some time or at home for some time in quarantine or different levels of isolation along the way. And so as we look at our return to school, we're not only concerned with the academic outcomes of our students and their progress in our content areas, but also have concerns about their social emotional well-being. And so this social emotional learning standards release is really around useful ways that teachers and families, guidance counselors, and others can work with students to build some skills and aptitude that will be, we think, beneficial to them as they grow and develop academically and as they grow and develop as citizens, both as they reflect on their own thinking and as they interact with other students. This work does align directly with the state board vision and mission and goals as we look at how we're preparing students to be successful down the road. I would say it aligns across the board and matches up with these board goals for student outcomes. When we look specifically at this purpose and structure of this document, our social emotional learning standards really are designed to enhance these students' capacity to integrate their skills and attitudes and behaviors so that they can manage the daily tasks that they're completing and the challenges they face as they interact with other students. The standards are comprised of 5 domains that you see here. There are intrapersonal domains in the orange wedges on the chart or the graphic. There are interpersonal or between people kinds of domains in green, and then there are cognitive areas that's the yellow wedge, that's responsible for decision making. Those are all part of this larger structure that can be taught, whether that's in a classroom setting, at the school level, or even within homes and communities. We have done a lot of this work in partnership with CASEL. CASEL is the Collaborative for Academic and Social Emotional Learning. They've been a strong partner with us. You've heard this acronym before because they are one of the partners that has been involved in our middle grades project. So let's dig in briefly to these 5 domains. Self-awareness is really the ability to identify an individual's thoughts and values and emotions and to recognize how those shape behavior. This self-awareness aspect involves the assessment of an individual's abilities, like I'm assessing my own strengths, my own areas where I need to grow. And it includes the need for confidence and optimism and knowledge of how I can improve or just really make a difference where I need to grow. Self-management really deals with self-regulation of emotions and thoughts and behaviors as students move toward personal and academic goals. Social awareness is one of those. It's between people. That's the ability to empathize with others and relate to others, including individuals from different backgrounds. This social awareness component involves kind of understanding of societal norms for behavior as well as contribution to the well-being of a community. The relationship skills aspect includes the ability to communicate effectively, to cooperate with others, to seek and provide support to others, to manage conflict, and to handle peer pressure in order to maintain positive relationships. And then this last component around decision-making includes the ability to really make constructive choices, to think critically and problem solve based on safe and ethical social norms while considering outcomes from your previous choices and how those might have impacted your position now based on your decisions from the past. Each of these domains will be divided into 4 grade levels when we look at our standards in a moment. K2, 3.5, 6.8, and 9.12, and will contain performance standards that students could master during that grade band. So just again, we're in a draft format right now. This is a K2 section connected to the first domain of self-awareness. You can see in that left column the grade band, in the middle column the performance standards, and in the right column the strategies. And then across the top you see an anchor standard. That anchored standard really describes what a student should know and be able to do. So for instance here, the standard is asking students to be able to identify their emotions and their related feelings within themselves. So to think about their own feelings. And then some of the standards are laid out with the identification of those emotions, determining what led to those emotions, and then being able to communicate those emotions or those feelings to someone else. On the right-hand side are strategies that might be used within a classroom setting, even within an existing content area for English language arts or math or science. There are opportunities to integrate that. This could be done again, at the classroom level, with a counselor leading this work, or even potentially through some activities at home that parents could help to facilitate. We're excited to see this progress, and I wanted to take just a quick minute to tell you who else has been involved in this. This did not come strictly from our counseling office in secondary ed or strictly from special education. You'll see a number of offices here across the agency, including from Dr. Vanderpert's shop with the Office of Teaching and Leading, and partnership with REAP Mississippi, Castle, and Cedar, another partner that we use at the national level to help us, particularly as we look at leadership and effective development of teachers in the classroom and their skills and their pedagogy. So we're excited to have these partners along for this work. We're in the final draft format now. We'll be bringing forward these standards to you in the coming months for final approval for APA. But we are in a position where we want to go ahead and push these standards out onto the website. We feel like we're in a position where we're far enough along that it's worth making them available for our teachers and schools to be able to use them. We will gather some feedback from that and make adjustments as needed along the way. And then we're continuing to partner with Castle and with REACH Mississippi as we develop training and Canvas courses to support teachers in the implementation of these standards. We'll further share our draft revisions with Cedar and with the Office of Teaching and Leading as they look at potential policies and course requirements that may be in place for our alternate route special education teachers. Again, we're excited to bring this forward to you. We think in light of what all we're dealing with right now with the pandemic, that the timing on this could not be better. And so I'll pause here and be glad to take any questions you may have.
Questions from the board?
I don't have any questions. Nathan, good work. We appreciate everything you've done with this.
Thank you, and a big thank you to our team for sure, Dr. Kelly. It's been involved.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nathan. And our spotlight today, I wanted to share something with you. Chiefs for Change recently released a multimedia report and they titled it Teacher to Chief, Pathways to Education Leadership. And it provided recommendations on how districts can encourage teachers to consider system leadership roles and then create the pathways to get them there. They've got a website dedicated to this called teachertochief.org. And it also includes stories and videos featuring state chiefs who started their careers as teachers. And I was honored to be asked to do one of these short videos. And though the video tells you something of my story, it's really a tribute to the Mississippi teachers and students of the state. So at this time, I'd like you to see this very brief video.
I did start as a teacher. I started as a 5th grade teacher.
Hi, how are you?
My heart is in the classroom. It always will be in the classroom.
All birds start life as a what?
It's where the magic happens every single day.
As eggs.
It has to be one of the most heart-rendering feelings that I have. You can't say enough about what teachers do. And that's really what it's all about. Like, how can we best support the teachers across the state to do the very hard work that they do each and every day? And what more can we possibly be doing that's going to make a difference in the life of a child?
Very good. You knew exactly where the glossary was, didn't you?
We involve teachers in everything we do. I don't care what task force it is or what curriculum event we're getting ready to plan. Teachers are at the table helping us develop this. When I first got here, there was not a superintendent's advisory group. There wasn't a principal's advisory group. There wasn't a teacher's advisory group. There wasn't a student's advisory group. So all those voices need to be at the table.
I think it's about time that we have a dialogue between the people who are in charge of education in the state and the people that it primarily affects. So it's a great initiative by Dr. Wright.
It means a lot because I feel like we as students get to express how we feel about the school to other people and see how their schools compare to ours.
Nobody gave me the permission to form these groups. I knew I needed to form these groups. And so now they've got a seat at the table and their voice is heard. You bring up a really good point, and I think that's something that's going to be important for us in terms of policy making, to take back to the board. We have more than doubled the number of children taking advanced placement classes and exams, and the passing rate has not dropped. When something like that happens and you feel like you've had a small role in that little teeny policy, then children across the state and parents across the state and legislators and communities across the state start to say, whoa, look at what our kids can do, right? And I think it's built a sense of hope across the state that there's a lot that's possible for children. But as a state chief, you're in a great position to drive those key policy decisions that need to be made. And think about all the children that are being impacted by that each and every day.
All right, you guys were right.
That's good.
So I was really touched. They actually flew the videographer in and the other reporter that was there and spent the entire day at an elementary school, and then when I met with my student advisory group. So I thought that you might appreciate that. So thank you, and that concludes my report.
Very good.
Thank you, Mr. Suggs.
Thank you, Dr. Wright. I'll move on to the report of the chair now. And to echo Dr. Wright's previous comments, it's been a busy last several weeks, as you can imagine, with the legislative session wrapping up, at least, in theory. They still can come back into session if there's any additional stimulus dollars provided by Congress. And I'll turn to Pete in just a little while in the subcommittee report to give you a full report on the outcome of the legislature. But with the end of the legislature, we're really super focused and engaged trying to work through what now has become a little bit of a major challenge around the school recognition program and how to solve that problem. And also on the upside, this amazing opportunity we've been given to begin the process of modernizing our distance learning assets and programs throughout the state. Originally, the U.S. Congress appropriated directly to districts through the CARES Act approximately $150 million, funds that they could use to prepare for the restart of school, but also to be dedicated for things like distance learning, just as a pedagogy pedagogical style that might be used in the future at their discretion. And on top of that 150 million, an additional 150 million was appropriated through Senate Bill 3044. That money, as I understand it, goes for devices and other components of a distance learning system that the districts need. And in addition to that 150 million was another $50 million appropriation through House Bill 1788, I think it is. And for those funds that can be used to support internet connectivity to unserved areas. So, with the 150 million from the original CARES Act, not all for distance learning, but a portion certainly on top of the 50 million for connectivity and the 150 million for devices and other components of a distance learning plan. We really have an amazing opportunity as a state to change the paradigm here. We really shift the paradigm and change the narrative in a lot of these districts that might not have otherwise been pushed or had the resources to plus up. That's just, to me, part one. Part two of this is, okay, now you got it all. Where's the professional development? What's the digital curriculum look like? Just because you have a computer doesn't mean you know how to use it. So there's a whole nother accountability part of this that we'll get into as we move along. But it's kind of like, when I worked for Haley Barber, you always used to talk about taking a sip of water from a fire hydrant. That's kind of how it feels right now. It's an enormous opportunity. We're certainly grateful to the legislature, both to the Senate and the House, and to the governor's office for moving forward with all of this. But there is a lot of work still to be done. And we, there's been a phrase I've seen floating around a lot lately that goes something along the lines of just give people a little grace as we try and work through this. That's what we're asking for. It's an enormous amount of policy detail that we're working through, trying to get direction from legislators and working through appropriate and massively flexible regulatory policy to ensure that this money gets used in the way that is intended for, and that we don't have to, have situations in the end where it's not being used, in a way that is intended. So lots to work through. Rest assured to the board that your executive leadership team is super focused on this. John Cramen has done, fantastic work. He's been in every meeting. He's probably working 80 hours a week. That's not a, histrionic statement. I believe that he really truly is. This is an enormous opportunity. I'm super excited about it, but it's a big deal and a lot of details are continuing to be worked out. I would imagine in about 2 weeks, this will be finalized, and I think that we'll know a lot more. And I would just suggest to Dr. Wright and her team, I know that they're communicating with the districts on a daily basis about this, but given that there's a district budget consideration in this, I would just say that I think sooner rather than later, we'll be able to explain all the details, but we're still trying to understand it ourselves. As you can imagine, it's a massive opportunity, and we just want to get it right. So I don't want to beleaguer that point. I just, again, want to, say, we're grateful to the legislature for this opportunity, and we intend to apply those funds, in an expeditious manner and in a way that, supports our boys and girls in schools across our state so that they can engage in distance learning. So I might just pause there because obviously this is a big deal, and ask if the board, has any questions either for me or Dr. Wright or her team. Okay, hearing none, I will move on now to the report of our student representative, Omar. He's going to talk to us about some of his summer studies programs, as well as some of the activities that are taking place in his county.
And Dr. Dean, can Pete Smith go after Omar before we go into the agenda to just provide an update on the legislation?
Yeah, I'm having him report as a legislative subcommittee.
Perfect. Thank you. Sorry.
Yep. Go ahead, Omar.
Well, up in here in DeSoto County, our school district has been making plans for our return to school, for our sports and for our academic life. We're planning it to try to make it as normal as possible, while giving students the option of just complete transparency with how we approach things. as far as I know, there's no delay in school just yet for our county, but all of the guidelines that we've proposed so far have been for the safety of the students and of the teachers and of just everyone involved. As for myself, I've been keeping just as safe as usual. My Stanford classes started just 3 weeks ago, I believe. And I've been keeping myself busy with those courses. And I just finished my tenure at the Youth Engage for Change Federal Board, which connected me with other students across the country to create articles for youth engagement in college and in high school. So that was a really good opportunity. But otherwise, I'm just keeping an eye out on how our schools are preparing to keep the safety of students the first priority, as well as teachers and administrators. And I'm ready to provide my input however I can at any level.
Thank you, Omar. Sounds like you're, of course, staying busy in unusual and unprecedented times. Any thoughts or questions for Omar?
Has Omar finished his Stanford program yet? Or did you get to do that, Omar?
Well, right now that's online. Part of the program is unavailable because we're not on campus this summer, but this week will be the halfway mark for the program, and I'll finish it in about mid-August.
Have you found it challenging?
It's definitely different from last year. I noticed whenever in fourth term of this past semester, just how difficult online learning can be with just keeping the attention span for it, seeing as an actual classroom. But definitely the adjustments made to online learning that Stanford made do help in a lot more than they probably think. Of course, I'd rather it be in class, but online, the way they've made it is a really healthy substitute, I would think.
Good.
I just want to make a comment on what Omar just said, because I think it's really, really important. Without, tooting Omar's horn too much louder than we already have. I mean, this is a very smart, very self-directed, independent learner, probably in the, top 0.5% in the state of Mississippi. And even though it's, collegiate level, type courses, he just said it's very hard to stay engaged and to, particularly if it's asynchronous style distance learning. So just imagine, you're the parent of a child in elementary school. And I know that we all know and can appreciate the sort of intuitively, what the challenges might be like, but to hear it from a student as gifted as Omar is, it's always important to remember that this is not the panacea. This is not the end all be all. This is not the preferable method of learning and teaching. It's what we have to do if we have to go back into a, situation, that we don't want to be in, where kids have to be at home. But Omar, I just appreciate you, being forthright and reminding us, just because we have all this stuff doesn't mean it just magically happens. Okay, we'll move on to our report of our subcommittees. I have 2 reports that I'm aware. Well, actually, there's 3 reports. We'll do legislative first. Pete.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Dean and members of the board for giving me the opportunity to just briefly summarize a few bills for you this year. As everyone already knows, that the legislature, as Jason mentioned earlier, is technically still in session. However, due to the coronavirus, the start and stops, just like school did this year in March, the legislature recessed and then reconvened later in May and finished up its general work toward the end of June. And so we were able to see about 20 pieces of education bills passed for this session. And I want to just highlight a couple of them here for you. As you know, last year, the legislature gave the ability for the School for the Arts to be able to become its own, what we call a local learning agency or local school district. which would free them up from some of the processes and procedures of the entire State Department. This year, the legislature saw fit to give the School for the Deaf and Blind that same autonomy to make their department or their school run more efficient. However, the states, you guys, the state board is still the board to both of those schools. They'll just be able to operate a little bit more efficiently and not be bound by the same processes and procedures of the State Department of Education. So that's going to be something that they're going to be very excited about. House Bill 1176 is an interesting bill that allows school bus drivers now to reach a maximum speed of 65. Just thought that was pertinent to mention to you on this call. House Bill 1336 is called the Mississippi Learn to Earn Act, which basically will authorize earnings of graduate credit through apprenticeships and other alternatives. Nathan can speak to this more broadly than I can, but we're probably a year into this already through state board policy that you guys adopted last year, which is going to be able to allow students to go get apprenticeships and earn credit for graduation and possibly even for college credit and even industry certification. So the legislature passed this bill this year to help us enhance what you guys have already passed. And I think that's going to become implementational here in the next year or so, Nathan, if I remember correctly. So that's a pretty good bill that was passed. And then furthermore, on the House side, House Bill 1700, which is our K-12 appropriation bill. I know there's been a lot of news about that bill lately in the news, but so the governor partially vetoed our appropriations bill. And what a lot of people don't understand is that appropriations bill includes not only the department's operational budget, which is separate from the district's operational budget through MAEP. So we have the MAEP budget inside this bill, as well as our department's operational budget. And just like every other agency this year, the department got between a 3.5% to 5% reduction in our operations costs. That was consistent with most agencies this year. And MAEP, as soon as it's, I guess as soon as it's voted on or redone, whenever the legislature and the governor decides to bring that back up, we'll see probably a reduction a little less than 2% than what districts received last year. So basically what our K-12 budget through the partial veto allows is for the department to continue its operations and operate as normal, but the Mississippi Adequate Education Program, as well as all of the line item funds that the legislature appropriates for various programs, as well as funds we call flow-throughs that the legislature appropriates for various programs. All those programs have been vetoed, and so it's going to take a fix of the bill before those programs can become operational by using their money. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. I know Dr. Gavin has been working with the governor's office as well as the Department of Finance and Administration to determine how we can move forward through this partial veto to see that school districts can receive money to operate. And so I know Dr. Gavin is continuing to meet with DFA, and hopefully that can be worked out before the end of the month so they can get some money for July. So going now to the Senate passed a couple of big pieces of legislation this year as well. There were a lot of extensions on repealers. The one I'll talk about is the one I know that Dr. Elam will be excited about, Senate Bill 2511, which we fought for a couple of years, that would see the College of Education candidates or students can enter a College of Education by meeting one of three requirements now instead of all three requirements. And if you recall, those requirements were a 21 on the ACT, a 3.0 grade point average, or making a qualifying score on the Praxis core. In the past, they would have to achieve all three of those to be admitted. Now they can achieve one of 3 of those and can be admitted into the colleges of education. So everyone was very excited about that. Second big piece of legislation that the Senate passed was, of course, the extension of the education scholarship account, which is the special needs scholarship that students who qualify for can receive, $6,500 to attend a school that meets their special needs. They extended that piece of legislation by another 3 years. There are a lot of different changes to it, but most importantly, the biggest change is that last year that program was funded at $5 million, which saw about 540, I think, or so students who participate in the program. To this year, the funding has been reduced to $3 million. And so we are in the process of working with our Attorney General to determine how we best move forward, and lawmakers to determine how we best move forward to ensure that we have the number of kids on the program that fit the budget. So that you'll be hearing more about that here in the next couple of weeks. Finally, Jason already mentioned to you the bills, the 2 big bills that passed at the end dealing with distance learning. Senate Bill 3044 deals with the bill that will provide technology devices for distance learning, and then House Bill 1788 will provide funds for connectivity issues to help resolve connectivity issues for students while they're distance learning. So. Mr. Chair and board members, that's my report. I can yield for questions, and I thank you for the opportunity.
Hey, I just have a quick question. This is Sean. Based on the portions that were vetoed, Pete, what's your outlook for getting the troops back together to see if we can get those issues resolved with all the COVID and everything that's going on? What's the outlook?
So I think the outlook is pretty good. When that will come, I don't know. As you just mentioned, they're in the last couple of weeks of the session. It was determined that there was an outbreak of COVID, and so a lot of members, I think at last report, I saw Dr. Dobbs said like 41 members of legislature and probably staff contracted the virus, and so the Capitol had to be shut down for 2 weeks. And so I'm sure once they deem it safe to return, hopefully they can get back in there and, address these issues with our budget.
Other questions?
This is Dr. Elam, and I just wanted to thank Pete for his hard work on getting the changes made to entry requirements into the School of Education at the Institute of Higher Learning. It's a very good job. We really wanted that very badly, and I thank him.
Thank you, and it was work among a lot of folks, including IHLs and others. And I'll just tell you, I think her name's Cindy Milton, is the education chair for Mississippi College, actually testified before the Senate Education Committee early in the session. It seemed like years ago now, but earlier this year in the session, that with this change, they estimate some 300 students, potential students now would qualify to be accepted in the program. So that would go a long way in helping our teacher shortage.
Right. Good.
Okay. Other questions or comments for Pete? Hearing none, then I'll move on to the next subcommittee. Dr. Kelly, you want to report on our student rep interview process?
Be happy to. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Several months ago, this process started. The Office of Accountability actually put out a call for applications for students around the state who had an interest in serving on the state school board as a junior rep. They received 26 applications, down just a little bit from last year. I think last year we had 32 or 33 applications. So we received 26 in this cycle. Of the 26, 23 met all of the requirements and eligibilities to compete for the slot. Mrs. Altman put together a smaller subcommittee made up of herself and some staffers from all departments at MDE and did the initial screening of the 23 applications. From that, they got down to 10 semifinalists. And I will tell you, you have a lot to be excited about with the 10 applicants that we interviewed this week. Ms. Aldman and I sat for interviews with those 10 on the 14th and 15th, which was Tuesday and Wednesday of this week. Had really a lot of fun doing that. I'm prepared now to give you the names of those who competed at the semifinalist level. Again, there were 10. We had Hannah Carson from Monroe County School District. She is at Hatley High School. Christina Don from Starkville-Ottibitaw Consolidated School District. She's from Starkville High School. The third applicant was Han Elasri. Han is coming from Lamar County School District, Oak Grove High School. The fourth applicant, April Gru Yu, Starkville-Ottibitaw, and she is also at Starkville High School. Zion Johnson, Columbia Municipal School District, Columbia High School. Kendrick Jones, East Jasper School District, Heidelberg High School. Anna Lafferty, she's from Lafayette County School District, Lafayette High School. Andy Robinson from Lamar County School District, Purvis High School. Weston Archer Taylor, Petal School District, Petal High School. The 10th applicant was Amy Zhang from Starkville-Ottibitaw County, and that is Starkville High School as well. The next step is Ms. Aldman and I will, of course, score all 10 of those applicants and send our tabulation, or our scores rather, to the Department of Accountability. And the Accountability Department will actually do all of the tabulation. And we will be prepared to have you interview the 2 finalists at the school board meeting on the 27th of August. We have also determined that all semifinalists, all 10 of them, and the 9 that are not fortunate enough to serve on the school board, those 9, of course, will serve on Dr. Wright's superintendent, the advisory council, student council advisory. So we're excited about all of the applications and what it means to us and our processes at the State Board of Education. I think you're going to be real pleased with the person that will be coming to you as your next rep. More to come.
Fantastic update, sir. Any questions for Dr. Kelly on that process? So one kind of, I guess it's an administrative question we can deal with later. I would hope in August that we can meet at the department. And I realize that some folks will not want to, or will have to do it remotely for whatever reasons. Tell me again how that interview process with those students would go. Are we, no matter what, interviewing them by Zoom? Are we asking them to come to Jackson? How's that look?
We hadn't really talked about that. The 10 interviews we had this week, all were by Zoom. And I can tell you, it's not a lot of fun spending 7 hours on the phone. And the first day we spent about 7 hours on the phone interviewing. So you can imagine that's a very tedious process. But what made that very doable was the young people that we had the opportunity to interview, some really outstanding candidates. I don't think any of us would doubt the fact that in-person interviews are much more effective. But in this case, all of the students had the same disadvantages. So all by the fact that all of them were interviewing by Zoom, nobody had an edge. So I think any way we decide to do it, the outcome will be fair and very much impartial. But we have not talked about whether or not we'll have them to come to Jackson or not. I don't think we've decided if we're going to be in Jackson yet or not. So
well,
I think that a lot of that will depend on the decision that's made about the full board.
Yep, and that's on in other business when we talk about moving the date, the originally published date. We can talk more about it at the end of our meeting. I just we need to be thinking through how we communicate that to our finalists.
Dr. Dean, may I interject?
Please.
Initially, when we thought we could interview them in person, each finalist and their parents were contacted about would they be comfortable coming to Jackson, and all but 2 indicated that they would be willing to come to Jackson, and the parents agreed. So if we're able to do that, then I think, and I don't know which ones had reservations, but we'll just see how that works out. But I think it's notable that they were willing to make the trip and take the risk of coming for an in-person interview.
And Dr. Dean, just one thing, we're going to need to make sure that we can social distance in the boardroom. That's the only thing about the shape of that and the number of seats and the number of people, because right now we're still under the no more than 10 rule. And so by Dr. Dobbs. So to Dr. Kelly's point, I think we'll just have to wait and see exactly where we are with the health department, but we are going to try and see what we can do around the social distancing piece inside that board.
Yeah, let's reserve all this for the end of our board meeting. But, you know, I'll just say, if we got to get creative and meet in the auditorium, I just think that we need to meet in person in August. You know, I don't want to go there because I think it's a distraction, but you know, with all the return to school efforts underway, I just think that we should make every effort we can and be as creative as we possibly can. And certainly if people have reservations, that would be respected. But if it's just me sitting in there with the camera, I think we need to be physically present. But let's, again, I don't want to hijack that part of the agenda for the last part. But I will turn it over now. Academic achievement in pre-K-12 subcommittee. Was that?
That's
yes.
me.
Yeah.
Well, may I add one more thing to our previous conversation? One of the questions we asked, it is relatable. One of the questions we asked each candidate was about their distance learning. Did they feel that and all of them did say they'd rather be in school. But the answers went from, I did nothing, I got nothing, to we really worked hard. My parents filled the gaps, you know, so it was an interesting assortment of responses. But of course, they all said we had to do it so quickly. It was difficult to make the adjustment. Academic achievement met this morning. Dr. Elam and I met with Dr. Oakley, and Dr. Oakley gave us an update, which I'm sure you'll hear more about during the meeting, on professional development, all that's going on, preparing for distance learning, all the things that are happening to try to start school again and get people comfortable from everything from the academic side to the social side to the emotional side, all the components of getting children settled and back in school. So you will hear more about that. And we reviewed the budget and the issues that are related to the School of the Arts, which we have on our agenda today. So I won't belabor those points, but those were our 2 items on our agenda today.
Okay. Questions or comments for Ms. Altman? Okay. Hearing none, I will then move to the heart of the agenda here, the discussion and approval of board items. The first is an action item with Dr. Vanderford up. I'll read it. This is one that has a lot of consequences. Approval by the State Board of Ed to suspend strict compliance with specific state statutes and the State Board of Education policy for the 2020-2021 school year following Governor Tate Reeves' proclamation of a state of emergency as a result of the impact of COVID-19 coronavirus on school districts in accordance with Mississippi Code sections 3315-31, 3315-11B and 9, 3315-11C and 1, and submit a waiver request to the U.S. Department of Ed under the ESEA Act. Dr. Vanderford.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad you had to say that mouthful and not me. This item is very similar to those that we've been bringing to you monthly since March. We've been dealing with the impact of COVID. And back in March, you'll see in your chart and your backup material for item 1, in March, we did ask for a rule suspension of reporting the professional growth system data to MDE for the 1920 school year. And last month, we did not include this item as a rule suspension, but after conversation with other states and further conversation with leadership and MDE staff, we felt that we needed to come back with a request for a rule suspension for the 2021 school year. We believe since districts have a number or 3 actually reopening options that we've provided, that it would be an overdue burden for districts to have to report PGS data. And we're also very concerned with the different modes of instruction, with the inter-rater reliability, as well as the data comparability across the years. So this is part of the requirement of our ESSA plan for reporting. So therefore, upon your approval to grant this rule suspension for districts, we will have to submit a waiver to the Department of Ed for approval. And as with 1920, we'll move forward in 2021, allowing districts that elect to continue to report the data to do so. So we did have districts, although they were not required to report data for the previous school year, they did so. So allow that same opportunity for the upcoming school year.
Okay, that was she said a lot in a short amount of time. So questions for Dr. Vanderford from the board and what this action does. I'll pause and say just for process, we apply to the Department of Ed. They approve it. Is it automatic, or do we have to go through any more procedures on our end?
No, there will not be any more procedures.
It's immediate. Okay.
I have a quick education question. This is Sean. By us suspending this rule or extending the suspension, is there any budgetary or monetary impact by not using this system, or no?
No, not at all.
Okay.
And if I might clarify, this would not require further action by the state board, but it will require approval by Ed. We're just getting your approval to start that submission with the U.S. Department of Education.
Yeah, and again, I think that I understand it, but maybe I'm just restating just to ensure that I do understand it correctly. This is a waiver from the ESEA requirements, and that means that the issue of state testing then can be put on the table at a later date, or how does it impact? I mean, I know what we've done in the past, waiving state tests, holding harmless on the accountability. So help me extrapolate this to the next step. They waive it. What's next?
Well, they waive it, and then we're just compliant. If we did not apply for the waiver and we did not report the data, we would not be compliant with the components of our ESSA plan. And so we want to comply with federal regulations. Upon districts not to report, we would need to request that waiver to do so.
Dr. Dean, to your point about each each section of the plan. If we are not doing any section of the plan, each section would require its own waiver. So if at later date, the decision or the discussion around testing and accountability comes up, that would be a waiver unto itself, just like this piece is a waiver unto itself.
Got it. Got it. That's where I was going is, dealing with the issue of state tests and accountability system within the state. Obviously, that's a big mountain to climb, and I just want to make sure I'm understanding how this fits into that. Okay, other thoughts and questions? Okay, this is an action item, so I need approval of action item number 1. Need a motion and a second.
Mr. Chairman, John Kelly, I so move.
Got a motion or a second?
Rosemary, I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any additional discussion? All right, hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. We'll move to action item 2, approval of a temporary rule and to begin the APA process to establish Mississippi Administrative Code 7-3, 9.2, State Board Policy Chapter 9, Rule 9.2, reporting attendance for virtual learning. Dr. Vanderford, Dr. Oakley.
Okay, this item is an extension of the item that we presented last month that did include all of the rule suspensions. If you recall, last month, the state board did not grant, we did not ask the board to waive, and you did not grant a rule suspension for the 180-day calendar requirement for attendance. However, we did waive some of the instructional time requirements to allow districts flexibility in developing their reentry plans based on the 3 options, the traditional, the hybrid, or the virtual model. And at that time, or last month, we shared with you that we would be developing a policy to provide guidance to the LEAs on how to record attendance for those students that were participating in a hybrid model or a virtual model. So the leadership team, as well as other MDE staff, we've reviewed numerous attendance policies or virtual attendance policies from other states across the nation. We have completed a thorough review of our state statute requirements, our state policies related to attendance for compulsory school-age children. And so we have developed this policy. Once we had it in its what we believed our final draft form, we participated in the Superintendent's Advisory Committee and provided the policy ahead of time to the committee and allowed them to review. And based on their feedback, we went back and made a number of revisions. We added a couple of items to the policy and provided clarifications to other areas based on their feedback. So we know this is a fluid document and that we will likely need to come back and revise this policy at a later date. And then it will certainly need to be revised for upcoming school years, as we know that we'll be continuing to provide virtual learning opportunities for students. But this policy represents the instructional time that has been approved for the upcoming school year of 4 hours. So we will have to revise the policy for the following school year when we go back to the 5.5 hours of instruction, and we're no longer under the board-approved rule suspension for instructional time. Nathan, Dr. Oakley, do you have anything else to add regarding the policy?
I would just say it's designed to address all the different approaches districts may take and kind of the reporting mechanism by which they can capture and submit that attendance data.
And so also, I failed to add that we have a FAQ document that is developed that will supplement this policy. And so as we've been getting feedback from the superintendents on the Superintendent's Advisory Committee, if it was something that we didn't feel like needed to be included in the policy, we certainly provided that clarification in the FAQ document. So we will have that to be released to the LEAs to accompany this policy early next week. We'll have that finalized.
Okay, questions? I've got a couple. What's the timeline for APA on this, given school starts in a few weeks?
Okay, so we're requesting the temporary rule, which becomes effective immediately. So once the board approves the policy today, it will be effective, and we will file the APA. We still have to go through the normal or the formal APA process with the Secretary of State, which takes a minimum of 55 days. But requesting the temporary rule, as you see in that last paragraph, it allows us to implement the policy immediately upon its filing. So we will file either later today or definitely tomorrow. But upon your approval, districts will know that this is the current policy for recording attendance.
Right, I guess that's the nuance of what I'm asking. It's temporary, so it's immediate, but there could be changes through the typical APA process that at some point we can, hearing any comments or, the efficaciousness of this policy, we can revisit it at some point and say, this isn't working, we can fine tune it. Because a lot of this is, pioneering type territory for a lot of folks, right?
Yeah,
so we'll have
you're exactly right, Dr. Dean. And that's really the reason for APA. My superintendent's advisory is a pretty broad group of people that provided the input, and I want to thank them for giving their time to do that. And we did implement a lot of their suggestions in our policy, but you're exactly right. When it comes back from APA, there may be other things that we have not thought about, or they didn't think about, or as a group we didn't think about, that we may want to edit.
Well, I just want to inflect on that point just a little bit more. So for those of you that are watching, there's about 170 people that I see on YouTube. Just participate in the APA process. Please participate, because what we don't want is a bunch of dissent after the fact without having engaged us. We're saying to y'all, nobody's done this before. This is precedent-setting policy, so please engage when that APA process becomes available, or just call us. Because we need your input. I can't tell you how many times I get comments and emails and phone calls after the fact, like, engage. There is a process. Please engage. The other question I have is on the MSIS system. So as the districts are doing their best to, if they have an LMS, recording it, or one-on-one if they don't, are they entering that information into MSIS?
Yes, they are. And John, you may want to talk about the codes that are going to be provided.
Right. So what we want to be able to provide for the districts is, one, that they would normally be sending us attendance data on their normal monthly reporting, and that reflects the daily attendance and all the rest. So what we want to be able to do is accommodate how those attendance figures were generated by the modality that Paula just walked through. So we're going to be providing them with a way to provide us with additional clarification on the mode. Right now, our initial thinking is for the school year, it'll be through their calendar, where they will indicate in the calendar the modality for the day. It's an open field that they can provide that information. But over time, we're going to make sure that we can find better ways for them to manage the complexity of this, as well as ultimately baking this into our long-term plans for the modernization of MSIS.
Okay, thank you for that. Other questions? I want to move on. I'll just say one more comment. This has been in the back of my mind since we've started this whole distance learning, amazing opportunity that we're going to be having this coming year, and that's creating an appropriate, non-onerous accountability model for our administrators and our students and our parents to ensure. We have a responsibility to ensure that the money that's being appropriated is properly executed and all that. So I see this kind of as a good big first step in ensuring that if you have it, you're using it, and then we'll get into the appropriateness of the curriculum alignment on another day. But I think there is an accountability model out there that's focused on digital learning that's forthcoming.
So one thing, Dr. Dean, that I would add to that, and to build off your remark, is that as we look through how we will implement and how we will arrange the particulars and the specifications of the components of the digital learning plan, a key part of that will be the metadata coming out of that helps us understand, with not active tracking by an individual teacher, for instance, but how does the system, the software, the hardware themselves tell us whether someone's logged in, how long they're logged in, what their level of engagement is, what they've done in terms of participation, what downtime looks like if either the internet isn't working or isn't available, or if the student is working offline and then logs in later and then uploads the data. We want all that sort of metadata tracked, not for the purpose of getting into the particulars of an individual student, but really understanding how effectively the system's working, and that should give us data to help us better understand the attendance and participation and engagement.
Let's not go down this rabbit trail now, but at some point we need an update on what's going to happen with the MSIS upgrade. I know that's a whole nother issue. I'm moving on. Under the offices of Chief under the offices of Chief Accountability Officer and Chief Academic Officer, do you have a motion to approve item number 2?
Karen Elam, so moved.
Okay.
Sean Suggs, second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any additional discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. We'll move on to action item 3, approval of preliminary calculation of MAEP base student costs for fiscal year 2022. Dr. Gavin.
Good morning, Dr. Dean and board members. As required annually, we're bringing forth to you today for your approval the preliminary estimate of the student-based costs and the preliminary estimate of MAP. So items 3 and 4 really go together. So you have in your backup the estimate that was calculated by the Office of School Financial Services and as well as our independent CPA, Scott Hodges. So action item 3, the student-based costs for FY 2022, which starts next July, our estimate is $5,867.80. And the only adjustment to the base student costs over last year was for inflation. Again, so the student-based cost for FY 22 estimate as of July is $5,867.80. So we're seeking approval for the student-based costs in action item 3.
Hey, y'all, any questions for Dr. Gavin? Okay, if there's not questions under Office of Chief Operations Officer, do I have a motion to approve item number 3?
I move acceptance of the action item.
Okay.
Second.
Second, Dr. Elam. Any further discussion? Hear none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Motion carries. We'll move to action item 4, approval of preliminary calculation of MAP fiscal year 2022. Dr. Gavin.
Okay, action item 4, as stated, is the preliminary estimate for MAP. Our student-based costs based on the previous action that you just approved would be $1,969,396,733. And also in the calculation of MAP, we have our add-on programs and we have other programs. So we're seeking approval for the preliminary estimate of FY 22 MAP of $2,549,020,179.
Okay. Big number. Questions? Comments? Okay, hearing none, under the Office of Chief Operations Officer, do I have a motion to approve item number 4?
I move for approval.
Sean, second.
Sean Suggs with the second. Any further discussion? Hear none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hear none. Motion carries. Then we'll move to action item 5, approval of fiscal year 2022 budget requests. Dr. Gavin.
Okay, action item 5, which includes the MAP that you just approved. Our request for our FY 2022 budget request is, and I won't go over all of the details because we spent a lot of time in our work session in the month of June going through the details. The only difference between what you saw in the month of June and today is we've added the $1 million as requested for work keys as well as advanced placement and dual enrollment testing. So that was an additional $1 million. And we also have the final numbers as just approved for MAP. So which brings our total 2022 requests to $2,857,705,090. And as stated, the majority of that is MAP, and the actual operational cost for MDE is only $28,196,818 of that $2.8 billion, which is less than 1% of the total ask.
Okay, you guys have the backup material. We covered this in June. We have the updated MAP base student costs plus the $1 million that was added for work keys or other tests, AP, et cetera. Any questions on this particular action item?
Mr. Chairman, I don't have a question, but just a comment. Dr. Gavin, I really appreciate you distinguishing what the overall budget is as opposed to what is coming to the State Department of Education. Oftentimes those two are confused and people start talking about what our budget is, not really informed about how much our operational budget really applies. So thank you for the distinction.
Certainly.
Good comment. Other thoughts or questions? If not, under the Office of Chief Operations Officer, do I have a motion to approve item number 5?
John Kelly, so moved, Mr. Chair.
Is there a second?
Second, Karen Elam.
Motion and a second. Any additional discussion? Hear none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hear none. Motion carries. And now we'll move on to action item 6, approval of MDE contracts A, B, C, D, and E. Dr. Gavin.
Okay. And I also would like to, just backing up to action items 3, 4, and 5, I would like to thank my staff for their hard work in helping with preparing the budget request. That is Letitia Johnson and Sharon Roselle. Okay, action item 6, we do have 5 contracts that are coming forth for your approval today. The first contract is action item 6A. It is a contract with Aladdin Food Management Service, and they are the providers of the food service for the School for the Deaf and Blind. So we're seeking approval for that contract for $365,523. Would you like me to go through all of them?
You go through all of them, and then we will approve them all at once, unless there's a need to pull any.
Okay. Action item B is a contract with Syngetics DCS, and that is a vendor that provides software support to our maintenance for File X system, and that is an OTSS contract. And the amount to be awarded is, in total, it's a 5-year contract for $86,802. Action item C is a contract with Warner Service Master, and this vendor will be providing sanitation services at our Office of Child Nutrition, and it is a 1-year contract for $62,914. Action item D is a modification to an existing contract, and it is for the acquisition of Oracle software license and support. The cost of the current contract is $402,000, but we're seeking a modification of $128,000. And our last contract that's coming forward for approval is a contract with SHI, and this company provides support for Microsoft products, and that contract is for $199,101.
Okay, any questions about any of these contracts, A, B, C, D, or E? Y'all have the backup material in your board book?
Dr. Gavin,
Yes,
this is Sean. Just a very quick question on Aladdin Foods. Is it correct they're located in North Carolina, or is that a local company for us?
it is actually located in North Carolina, and we did seek requests for proposals on this, and they were the lowest bidder.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Dr. Gavin? If there's none, then under the Office of Chief Operations Officer, do I have a motion to approve items 6A, 6B, 6C, 6D, and 6E?
This is Sean Sugg, so moved.
John Kelly, second.
Great. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, no opposition, motion carries. Finally, for Dr. Gavin, we'll move to approval of MDE grant awards, 7A and 7B.
Thank you. We have two grants coming before you today for approval. The first one is action item 7A, and it's to renew the grant with the University of Mississippi for the Mississippi Teacher Fellowship Program. This was a 10-year grant, and this is the last year of this 10-year of this grant. And the last year we're seeking to award $228,663, and this is the last year of this 10-year grant.
Okay, if you'll go to B, then we'll, if there's not any questions, move to B and we'll take a vote.
And the second and final grant that we're seeking approval on, it is for our educator in residency grant. We're awarding this to, I think, 2 districts in the amount of $147,372.96.
Okay, any questions on either of these grants? You have the backup material in your board book. If you have any questions for Dr. Gavin, now's a good time. If not, then we'll take a motion under the Office of Chief Operations Officer to have a motion to approve items 7A and 7B.
Mr. Chairman, John Kelly, I move approval of the motion.
Do I have a second?
I will second it, Rosemary.
Great, we have a motion.
Let me correct that. Move approval of the agenda item, not the motion.
I wasn't going
I heard that. You know, my brain right now is just mushed. Roger that. We stand corrected, sir. Approval of the motion with the second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? No opposition, motion carries. Okay, next is our consent agenda. All items are action items, which, wait, I'm sorry, I skipped over. All right, I've got two different agendas here, so I just want to be clear. One agenda has 8, which would be an update from John Craman, and then one doesn't. So do we have 8 on the official agenda? I have 2 copies, and I know we've been updating last minute, so it's not a criticism. I don't want to skip over John if he has a report. How about this, John? I know I've kind of went into detail during my presentation. I'll just open it up to you to say if there's any questions or technical questions that anybody on the board might have for John, as opposed to rehashing what I covered. Now might be the good time since it's just an information update. John.
Well, I'll take any questions. I can't say anything more eloquently than you did earlier, so I'll just defer to the board members for any questions. If not, I'm happy to sit back down.
Yeah, I don't think that there are. And again, I apologize. Like I said, I've got two agendas. I know we've been updating them. And in fact, we've got an update to the executive session agenda that we need to make sure we acknowledge here. But John, thank you. We'll move on now to number 9, consent agenda. All items or action items which require vote unless otherwise noted. Under consent agenda, do I have a motion to approve items A, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, and K?
I will move for approval, Rosemary. If
John Kelly, I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any additional discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? No opposition, motion carries. Okay, let's see. Now we will move into the consideration of executive session, and I'm told, Dr. Kelly, that our attorney sent you an updated version of the call, and I have it on my email here as well. And it was sent at 9:48. So the motion for executive session is at 9:48. If you want to read from that, then we'll go into executive session.
I didn't see the first one, so let me go back. Let me go back and see, can I find them? What time was it sent to me?
9. I have mine arriving at 9:48.
9:48. Let's
Get your
see.
NDE email. So I'll forward this one to your Gulfport one.
Yeah, do that.
Well, I'm glad to see you're not ready because I obviously got bumped because I wasn't ready last month. So
You don't miss a beat, do you, Rosemary?
This is not working well.
Oh my God. Oh my God. All right, I sent it, Dr. Kelly.
You hit the send on it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. This is like watching paint dry. I don't see anything yet.
Here, I don't know if this is Plan B or not. Can you read that?
Heck no, I can't read that.
The old-fashioned way.
Let's see. You know, this is interesting. I'm looking at all of my emails from this morning. Oh, yours just popped up, Dr. Dean. Let me see if I can open up the attachment. Okay, Mr. Chairman, I move that the board consider making a closed determination of the need to go into executive session.
Okay, we have a motion for the need. Is there a second?
Second, this is Sean.
Okay, we have a motion with the second. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no opposition. Okay, we should clear the
Good afternoon. The board has voted to go into executive session for the following reasons. Discussion of discrete personnel matters in accordance with Mississippi Code annotated section 2541.7 4A and K related to the approval of the appointment of an Education Bureau Director 2 to serve in the role of Special Education Director at the Mississippi Schools for the Deaf and Blind. The approval of a salary adjustment of an Education Bureau Director 2 in the role of Assistant Superintendent and Statewide Services at the Mississippi Schools for the Deaf and Blind. The approval of the appointment of an Associate Superintendent to serve in the role of Equity Officer, and the approval of the appointment of a Deputy State Superintendent to serve as Chief of Advocacy and Counsel. If you can please pause the live.
Okay, in executive session, we moved for the approval of the appointment of Ed Bureau Director 2 in the role of Special Education Director at the Mississippi Schools for the Deaf and Blind, and Sharon Williams has been hired in that role. Under item 2, we moved to approve a salary adjustment for the Assistant Superintendent for Statewide Services for the School of Deaf and Blind. I don't think I have to say her name. Approval, item 3 was approval of an appointment of Associate State Superintendent in the role of Equity Officer. That's Mr. Quentin Ransberg. And finally, under number 4, we moved for the approval of appointment of Deputy State Superintendent to serve as Chief of Advocacy and Counsel. And that person was Mr. Joe Goff. That was our all of our items in executive session. So now we'll move on to the final couple of items on our agenda. Any report on meetings attended in the last month? Probably not. Any necessity for approval of attendance at meetings in the coming month? Okay, actually got a couple of still important things to cover. Next up is our election of chair and vice chair. At this time, I'll open the floor for nomination for the board's chair for the 2020-2021 term.
Mr. Chairman, this is John Kelly. I want to preface my motion with just a comment, and I think all of you and all of us can appreciate it. These are rather challenging times that we're doing the business of education in the state of Mississippi. We have this COVID-19 issue that we're dealing with that has really impacted how education is administered in the state and how students are required to learn. It's a total paradigm shift for all of us, including the educators in the field and the students themselves. The best evidence of that, Omar talked about it in his report this morning about the challenges of digital learning. I say all of that to just frame this and put it in context with what we're dealing with. With all of the things that we have going on now with COVID-19, we have a new governor, we have a new lieutenant governor. I just think it's important that we have some sense of normancy. And with that, I would like to recommend, and I hope you are in a position, Mr. Chairman, to accept, but I would like to recommend that that you remain in the chair for a period of at least a year to give us an opportunity to catch our breaths, but also to make sure that the digital learning that we are confronting, your relationship with Dr. Wright and John, and just seeing this from a board perspective, I think has been critical. And I think that piece is important. So I'd like to nominate you to stay in the chair for another year, serving as our chairman of the board.
Well, thank you for those kind words, Dr. Kelly, and for the nomination. I, of course, accept the nomination, and we'll open it up for discussion. If there are other nominations, now is the time to make those nominations or have additional discussion. Okay, I don't hear additional.
Hearing none, Mr. Chairman, I would move to close the nomination for chair.
Okay, motion to close. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay, let's see. So I think we vote on chair and then vice chair. So at this time, there's a motion with a second. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. First of all, before we move on to being to the vice chair nominations, I'm honored to continue to serve. I do think this is a consequential moment. Probably a handful of times we could point back to those that know our history. I'm truly honored to have your trust and confidence in moving forward. And we look forward to taking care of the business of education for our boys and girls across the state. So thank you very much for the honor to serve for one more year. At this time, I'll open the floor for nominations for of the board's vice chair for the 2020-2021 term. Because we're down to 5 members, we've had to do a little planning in advance, which I'll address that in a second. I move that we nominate Dr. John Kelly as vice chair, and would say, having been previously in this position as chair, and presumably rotate back into the role of chair, I think we couldn't be in better hands. He has now become a nationally known figure. I've worked with him with NASB, and he's considered a leader, not only in our state, in his city, but across this country when it comes to education matters. So we couldn't be in better hands. But at this time, are there other candidates for vice chair? All right, hearing none, I'll close the nomination. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Dr. Kelly, for agreeing to continue your service. Okay, on the
congratulations to both of you, gentlemen. It's a pleasure to work for you and with you.
I feel like my natural sense of humor would say there's some joke in here, but these are really serious times, and it's a significant responsibility that impacts hundreds of thousands of Mississippians, and so again, it's just a real honor to serve. Okay, other business. We need a approval to change the previously published meeting date of August 20th to August 27th. And before we get into the motion, let me just address kind of the elephant in the room, so to speak. We are down to 5 board members. We have 9. It's a little, it's a matter of time to some degree, in that our teacher and administrator just stepped down last month. So I mean, it's not, we were down just 3, and then through the appointment confirmation process, we now have, the lieutenant governor is now in a position to appoint someone else, and the governor has 4. Just know, I want the board to hear me. We are talking to those offices every day. I was talking to the lieutenant governor's office last night at 10:30 about this. So don't think that we're not paying attention, nor have we been talking about this for months. It's a process that we do not control. We can simply just advocate and lobby and urge. And I would hope by August, we are not in a position where we're down to everybody having to show up to have quorum, which is untenuous, especially with everything that we have to do as a board. It's just a function of, everything else, pandemic, So just know that I recognize it's a challenge and we're working on it. And because of this, we've moved the meeting from the 20th to the 27th. So I need a motion to approve that, please.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? Here none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? No opposition. Motion carries. The second action item would be the approval of a work session of the state board immediately following the regularly scheduled board meeting, starting at the earliest at 1 p.m. So we're about to end at 12. We would have an hour break. So we start at 1 p.m. for the purposes of interviewing the student representative finalist, which we talked about earlier. Any additional comments, Dr. Kelly or Ms. Altman?
Mr. Chairman, that's for, you're talking about for the August meeting, right?
Sir, August 27th, 1 p.m.
That's correct. Okay.
Other clarification, questions, comments? If not, then we'll take a motion in a second.
I so move.
Second it.
Okay, get a motion in a second for Ms. Altman. All those in favor, any discussion here? None. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Finally, the August board meeting will be held on August 27th, 2020, starting at 10 a.m. The board work session will immediately following, starting at the earliest at 1 p.m. for the purposes of interviewing the student representative finalists. And I'll just say, we could talk about this now, but the intent, unless there's something, that data tells us otherwise, the intent will be absolutely to meet in the Department of Education building and on West Street. If people need to do it remotely, that's perfectly acceptable. If you're comfortable with coming in, we will practice social distancing, wearing masks coming in, 6 feet apart, everything. But certainly if people need to come in and come out, we'll set all that up. But I would like it just to see us meet, and certainly we'll make accommodations for anybody who is not comfortable with that. But I do think that's the right thing to do. So unless you hear otherwise, plan on meeting here in Jackson. And I would also advise the student representative interviewees to make their decision. Do they want to do it remotely or do they want to come in? And we'll plan accordingly. So is there any discussion on that before we move to adjourn?
I don't have any discussion on that. I think that's good. I do have one comment though. There's an article in today's Wall Street Journal that features the Jackson Public Schools, and it's about remote learning and does it widen the education gap. So it's very timely, I think, and I think you'd all be interested since the Jackson Public Schools are the feature a number of pictures and interviews with parents and administrators.
Dr. Dean, I've got one question. I apologize for waiting to the end, but I think as a board and as the State Board of Education, we really need to be prepared for the onslaught of questions and phone calls that could potentially come when schools start to support the districts from a helpline perspective. Are we preparing for that?
Dr. Wright?
Are you talking about the Department of Ed or are you talking about the State Board of Ed?
The State Board of Ed. Are we ready for, I think we're just going to get an onslaught of what ifs and why ifs and all those things. Are we preparing for that kind of onslaught of support potential?
I'll make a comment, and Dr. Wright, please do weigh in. Of course, I get, I'm laughing because conversation I had with Rosemary not long ago. She had a hypothesis because Altman was first that she took all the bullets. That's the first one they get after. There's a lot probably to be said about that. I don't take that many, but I do get several a month. And what I do is I absolutely try to call them back. But you're right, Sean. I mean, we'll see an uptick surely, and it's already happening. I've gotten more calls lately for sure. To me, everybody's got to make their own way here. And sometimes I'm comfortable answering, and sometimes it's so into the weeds. I have to send it over to Dr. Oakley, for example, on one question regarding graduation rates, and just say, will you please help me? And I know that's his category, so I just sent it to him. If I don't know, the board has a representative in Sonia Ami, and she is fantastic. I can't tell you, scores of times I've sent her things over the time I've been on the board, and she's been able to sort it and put it to the right person in the department, get an answer, and then be respondent to those that are seeking questions. Sometimes we can't answer them for legal matters, or we just don't know the answer, and that's okay too, just to say I don't know. But I just, from my point of view, Sean, I rely on the very capable staff, at the department, and just answer them if you can. Try to be responsive, but you got people hired to support us on that.
Yeah. Thank you.
I just want to echo that. If you've got questions that you can't answer, feel free to forward them to any of the leadership team, and we'll see that you get the answer that you need. We are going to be bringing to you a summary of the district's plans for reopening at the August meeting. That survey went out, the template was sent out asking exactly what each district was doing. That's due back to us at the end of this month. And then we'll be able to give you an idea in August of what the lay of the land, if you will, looks like.
Okay.
We have given updates on a regular basis. We had been doing it daily since March, but starting this week, we went to a Tuesday, Thursday update for the superintendents, the principals, the teachers, everybody in the district. So as we are getting information, whether it's from Dr. Dobbs and the state state health department, or whether it's updates from the CDC, or whether it's new resources that they can use, that is going out on a regular basis to all superintendents. I am also getting emails and letters from parents and teachers, and I'm getting them from both ends of the spectrum. I'm getting those from teachers and parents that say, I want my kids back in school full-time in front of a teacher. And I'm getting those very same letters from teachers and parents that say, I don't think we're ready to be back in school full time. And so each district has had to make its own decision about that and about which plan they were going to use. And it was a requirement on your part that each of these plans be approved by the local board. So we've been having to refer people back to their local districts and boards and superintendents because those are the people that are making those kinds of decisions at those sites. So I fully expect to get more letters as time goes on.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Chairman, comment. I think all of us get those calls. I know I do. And I try to answer them all. More often than not, I too have to refer them to the Department of Education or call myself and try to get answers to get back with the parents. I for the first time in 9 years, though, just this week, got a letter from a parent who had a child in Catholic school and had an issue and had sent me a letter and followed up with a phone call to solve it. And we got a laugh out of it. She didn't really know that State Board of Education had no authority over Catholic schools. And when I told her that, she said, oh, I didn't know. She says, I just need help. I says, let me just say this. I'll never be so presumptuous to think I can tell the Pope what to do. And she got a big laugh out of that. But I had never had anybody from a parochial school or private school to contact, but just this week. So we directed her back to the Pope, and I'm assuming she'll get her answers.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks.
There's two more quick business items that have been brought to my attention. One, separately, Paula, last month, I think you did a great job of providing all the statutes, rules, regulations, orders that we have waived under our authority. If you wouldn't mind updating that, particularly as items 1 and 2 get sorted out. I think, Sean, to your point, like just having that succinct copy of the things that have been done, to me, that's the most powerful and substantive things that we've done as a board. And you know, I think the most questions come out of that. And separately, I'm asking y'all's forgiveness. I'm starting off on the wrong foot as the chairman for a third year, but in my consent agenda, I skipped over item B. In my notes, it said A and C, but it should have been B, which is the approval to revise the state board policies around rigorous substantive and rigorous curriculum policy. It's just an oversight on my part. So if I can get a motion and a second, we'll approve that and move to adjourn.
Should I start with a motion to rescind my motion
Yes.
to have you stay on as chair? Is that where I need to start?
Yes. You're asking me. I'm just saying. I'm one.
I so move, Mr. Chairman.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right.
And I have a comment when we get through with this.
Okay. We'll motion second. Any further discussion? Hear none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Comment, Mrs.
To follow up on Sean's comments and yours, it probably would be helpful if we had a talking point sheet that outlines what you just said of all the things that we've changed or rescinded, and who's responsible for what. And for example, our school district released their plan Wednesday morning, and there've been 1,000,001 comments about, well, why can't we do this, or why are they doing that? So I think it's helpful to know that those kinds of things are directed back to the local district, and what's directed to the State Department in terms of, you know, whatever. If there's just a talking point sheet that we might receive, that would help answer some of those questions, because as more and more districts, I mean, I even got, to your point, I even got a call from Meridian about their school program. Like I have anything to do with Meridian school program, but so anyway, I think that would be helpful for all of us, so we're all saying the same thing or directing our questions to the right people.
We'll be happy.
Great idea.
That is a good idea. And it's interesting because during this time, it has been very revealing to me, the amount of authority that a lot of folks think that I have, that I don't have. And so they are asking me as the state superintendent, why aren't you doing X when I don't have the authority to do whatever that ask was? So we've been trying to filter them through to the people that are really responsible for some of the decisions that folks want made. So.
Right. So yeah, Dr. Vanderford, that document that we talked about, just again, bullet point level, this amount of detail that gets the point across and share it with the board, that'd be much appreciated. All right. Any other comments, questions? Here none. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Right.
Dr. Elam. I'll second it. Dr. Elam.
Ms. Altman. Any further discussion? Here none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank y'all. Enjoy your rest of your week and your weekend, and see you in August.